So, today we will talk about basic considerations in research processes. Before we examine that researchers have found in the major areas of psychology, we need to identify the way psychologists gather data about behavior and mental processes. Recall that psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental functioning of individuals. It is scientific because it uses the principles and practices of the scientific method. Let's see how psychologists know what they know. Empirical investigations in any field requires the use of scientific method to observe, measure, and experiment, even if you never do any scientific research in your life. Mastering information on psychological research will be useful. Psychological research processes can be divided into two major categories, usually occur in sequence, that is, getting an idea or context of discovery and testing it, context of justification. Discovery and justification. Context of discovery. This is the initial phase of research during which observations, belief, information and general knowledge etc. lead someone to come up with a new idea or a different way of thinking about phenomena. Role of theories, hypotheses, and paradigms in psychological research. Researchers begin with the assumption of determinism, the idea that all events, physical, mental, and behavioral, result from specific causal factor. Researchers also assume that behavior and the mental processes follow set pattern of relationship that can be discovered and revealed through research. What are psychological theories? In general, attempt to understand how brain, mind, behavior, and environment function and how they may be related. Any particular theory focuses on a more specific aspect of this broad conception, using a body of interrelated principles to explain or predict some psychological phenomenon. The value of a theory is often measured in terms of the new ideas or hypotheses that can be derived from it and tested. A hypothesis is a tentative and testable explanation of the relationship between two or more events or variables. A variable is any factor that changes or varies in size or quality. To illustrate this, mood may be a variable, since people's mood may vary from one situation to another. Test performance is another variable, since a person's scores may vary from one test to next test. Our understanding of complex processes is also aided by using the correct paradigm. A paradigm is a model of the functions and interrelationships of a process. It is a way of thinking about the world and how to study it. Entire field of knowledge, including psychology, can change directions when new paradigm challenges existing ones. When paradigms shift, revolutions of knowledge usually follow. Quoted by Kuhn, 1970. Before a new theory, hypothesis, or paradigm makes a difference in science, it has to undergo an ordeal of proof. Most often, this happens when researchers publish, that is, make public, their findings, and other scholars investigate whether they find the same patterns if in their own data. This process of publication and communication moves scientific research into public eye, where ideas are tested and proven. Research biases. One of the challenges while doing research is to maintain and remain objectivity and free from biases. Most of your ideas and beliefs are probably linked with certain bias because they are influenced by your opinion or values. A variety of bias have been found to distort people's impression of collected data. External influences, such as one's culture and media, can influence people to accept a particular world view. Personal bias distorts estimating or evaluating process of a result of personal belief, attributes, or past experience. Observer bias operates when some events are taken as meaningful by some and not taken meaningful by others. It must be kept in mind that researchers themselves were raised in certain cultures and societies. They also might have been exposed to certain gender role expectations. This background factor can all affect the way that researchers observe and interpret events in their lives. Expectancy bias can affect observations. Yes. So, expectancy bias can affect observations of behavior by encouraging reactions to the events being observed. Researchers sometimes expect to find specific outcome. They may see what they expect to see rather than remaining objective. Unfortunately, if one is not alert to the possibility of expectancy bias, it may seem as though the observed events are being discovered instead of ascertained, created by the observer's expectations. Placebo biases operate when people strongly want to believe a treatment is successful. For example, many people may claim to feel better after taking a placebo, such as a sugar pill, in those causes where the outcome involves a subjective judgment about results. That is, how well a person feels well or whether the pain has been reduced or relieved. The desire for a drug or therapeutic method to work may be induced enough to achieve the desired result. Context of justification. The context of justification is the second phase of research on which results are prepared for useful communication. Psychologists face a difficult challenge when they try to accurate data and reliable evidence that will generate valid conclusion. They rely on one ally to succeed. The scientific method is a general set of procedures for gathering and interpreting evidence in ways that limit errors and yield dependable conclusions. Scientific attitudes and values associated with research process. Scientists are motivated by a curiosity about the unknown and the uncertain. Since the truth may be disguised, the scientific method demands a critical and skeptical attitude towards any conclusion until it has been duplicated repeatedly by independent investigations. Secrecy is banned from the research procedure because all data and methods must eventually be open for public verifiability and domain. Other researchers must have the opportunity to review the data and one conclusions and then attempt to replicate the results. Thus, science is not a set of rules, but rather a process of asking, observing, explaining, testing, and retesting explanation of reality. Objectivity safeguard in research process. This consists of procedural safeguard, standardization, operationalization, avoiding of bias. Since subjectivity must be minimized in the data collection and analysis phase of scientific research, procedural safeguards are used to increase objectivity. These safeguards being with keeping complete records of observations and data analysis in a form that other researchers can understand and evaluate. As a result, most scientific reports are written in a similar form and published by organizations of scientists. These reports communicate ideas to the entire scientific community and open those ideas to criticism. A second safeguard is standardization. Standardization means using uniform, consistent procedures in all phases of data collection. All subjects should receive the same instructions and be treated in the same way. By applying a standard treatment for all participants in the course of study, researchers ensure they will have the same basic experience. A third safeguard involves standardizing the meaning of concepts known as operationalization. An operational definition of a concept defines that concept in terms of how it is measured or what operations produce it. Researchers must also safeguard objectivity by avoiding bias. As explained earlier, bias from external influences, personal beliefs, observes, perspectives, and human expectations can all distort data. Researchers use various control procedures to avoid such biases and test hypotheses in ways that are fair and error-free. So, in next podcast, we'll talk about steps in research processes. What are the steps that we are supposed to follow? Thank you for listening. Bye bye.